the road to recovery. And I speak to you today coming from a place where some of you may well know was a pretty dark place last year. And I thought I'd share some of the experiences I've had and how I've got here today doing this broadcast and what's coming up next. Because I think people can hopefully take something from this, where we all have adversity in our lives. And it depends on how you deal with that adversity, because the quality of your life is in direct proportion to your ability to deal with bad news and adversity. If you think about that, what I've just stated there, I nicked that from Tony Robbins, by the way, is if you think about it, we all have adversity, don't we? It's not something that's unique to me. We all have it. And some adversities are far worse than others. Some are traumatic. Some are, just knock us off balance. But how do you come back from something that's adverse, especially if it's a biggie? And how do you take control of your life? Because sometimes these things can have a habit of knocking us off balance. And so I find myself getting a little bit emotional today. And I don't think people will ever realize where I've come from as far as in my head's concerned, the dark places I was at. And to give you context of this, and so hopefully most of you would have known by now that my youngest child, Zoe, took her own life last year on the 3rd of October 2022. And although it was not a surprise, it was a shock, a huge shock to the system. And this scenario had been going on for some time. And I take you back to 2012, and most of the people will possibly know that I was quite heavily involved in public life, doing public speaking, talks, training in property and stuff like that. And I was quite heavily involved in that. And it was a great time in my life, and we're moving on with it. And I spent a lot of energy getting that business up and running, and was thoroughly enjoying it. And then in September 2012, my then son Harry announced that he wanted to change genders. It wanted to be known as Zoe, and the transition started from there. Also, there was an attempt, although more of more of a cry for help at the time, of taking her own life. And at that moment, my life changed completely, because I find myself in a situation, and I'm only just trying to give you, I don't want sympathy. I don't want, oh, poor Paul. I'm not doing this for this reason. I'm doing this because there's someone out there who may have a similar position or similar circumstance, or someone who's got a problem and find it difficult to move through, because things happen to us, and I'm a bit of a control freak, really. I like to imagine controlling everything in my life, but there's certain things that happen you can't control. You've got no control over. I had no control over that whatsoever, and I found myself in a situation where I didn't know what to do. So the only thing I knew was to just accept this is what she wanted. And you'll know I'll always talk and refer to her as she, because she became my daughter. And so it was more about acceptance and putting all my own feelings on hold. And it was my priority to protect one of my kids. And anyone who's a parent will understand that. And for the next 10 years, we had great anguish with different bits and pieces with mental health, which anybody going through that situation when you're dealing with someone else's mental health, it's hard to deal with that, because what do you do? What do you say? What you all these things going through your head, and they're you're frightened to say the wrong things. Your main objective is to protect, and and it sometimes you don't know what to do, and all these things layered upon layered upon layered on top of. I'm trying to grow this business I'd created, and in the end it became a situation where something had to give, and so I lost interest in the business, and my main concern was protecting my family. And that's what basically happened, is that I took a back seat from public life from 2014, because you got to a level where you'd done a lot of work and you had the remnants of that, and then I didn't push further on from there, and so I just let it peter out. And it got to the stage where I found myself in a position in 2022. We had numerous problems throughout that time. My daughter had transitioned; she'd had the op, and I really thought she was getting her life back together, because in 2020 she decided that she wanted to become a software engineer. Now, I don't know if anybody understands coding and software engineers, but that's a tall order to say I'm going to go and teach myself to code, right? And I was so proud of her, because she did that in 8 months and then got herself a job in a firm, and it looked like her life was turned around. And she got herself a little flat over in Reading, and it appeared that she was happy. We'd have a problem every now and again. You could tell when she dipped, and anyone living with any mental health issues with other people, you can tell if they're not right. And sometimes we'd have issues to deal with, but overall it was a lot better than it was. Ever since she had her operation in 2018, it all seemed to be hunky-dory, so to speak, and until 10 days prior to her passing, and we realized it wasn't what we expected. I was fortunate to have picked her up 10 days beforehand, bought her home here, and spent probably the best 10 days I've ever had with her, understanding and her admitting to me that the operation wasn't a success and that she wanted to end it all. And I thought I got through to her. And then by the 3rd, I had a police knock on the door on the 3rd of October to inform me that she'd been successful in taking her own life. And that was hard, as you can imagine. And I'm only trying to lay the foundations for where I got to in when after that period of being told this is what had happened. And immediately I just went into meltdown. I couldn't cope with it. And then for the next 3 months, my life was hell. In here, it was horrendous. I cannot tell you how bad it was. I remember riding out with my mates one day, thinking, I was on my push bike. There was a lorry coming the other way, and I thought, if I just lean over to there, he'd take my head off, and it'd be all gone. I mean, that's how bad it got. And so it got to a period in 2022 in December. I think it was about 28th of December. I hadn't looked forward to Christmas, and there was a moment at which everything changed. And this is the reason why I'm doing this broadcast, is because there is a process to come from where you were, that point of despair, complete despair. How do you get from despair to what you see today? What you see today is a man that's got renewed vigor in life, and even after such tragic circumstances, finds the meaning of life again and pushes through and comes out the other side. And And the reason for my change was, I think there's a process that you have to go through. And that process is very simple. It's not complicated. And I found myself asking a question. And that question was, what am I going to do? Is this it? Or what am I going to do? And the decision I made there and then was, no, I've got to pull myself out of this. Zoe wouldn't want that. She wouldn't want her dad to suffer. She wrote me a beautiful letter, 6-page letter, explaining that, this was going to hurt, Dad. I know it's going to hurt. But she said to me in her letter, like, all the hardships I've ever had, I'll find a way through. And she said, if anyone can take a shit situation and turn it into something worth fighting for, that's my dad. And I took that as a mantra. And I was walking the dog and saying it to myself time and time and time again. If anyone can take a shit situation, turn it into something worth fighting for, it's my dad. And I kept repeating it and repeating it and repeating it. And as I repeated it, I felt a little bit better. I didn't feel great, but I felt a little bit better. It was a little bit of hope that was coming through that mantra. And this went on for days. And I do remember, and on Facebook there is a post of her memorial when we first got it, when it had reserved on it. She hadn't been scattered, and we hadn't put all the stuff there. It was a little tree, and it was there. And my bike was at the back. I'd ridden up there to the Crem, which I do regularly. And I wrote a post about I'd lost my mojo. And I was thinking about her journey, Zoe's journey. And Zoe's journey started in Canterbury in 2012 when she first came out as Zoe. That's where she was living. And this isn't a story about transition, or this is just a story of a journey that she went on and I went on with her. And it just really encapsulates the meaning I put into this thing that I was going to do. But she died in Reading, in the flat that she loved. And I thought to myself, because I'm an avid cyclist, I like to push myself. I like endurance. I like doing long bike rides. I've done London to Paris in 24 hours. I've done 160, 170 miles in a day. Yeah, these are the sort of things I like to do. I like to push myself. And I thought, well, what better way to mark the first anniversary of her passing was to start at Canterbury, ride for one day all the way through to Reading. It's 128 miles. What way could that would be a fantastic marker? I could do it for charity, and I was thinking to myself, what charity should I do it for? And I was racking my brains thinking, I don't really want to do it for a trans charity, not because I don't necessarily agree or disagree with the trans scenario. I just found it too divisive, and people are either on the fence or off the fence. But what was a challenge for Zoe was the suicide ideation she had for years, even after her transition. It was the mental health issues that she had that was driving that ideation, and her complex issues that she had. And I thought Papyrus, which was for the prevention of suicide in younger people. Sorry. And I had that purpose and said to myself, that's what I'm going to train for. That's going to give me the purpose to live. So on the anniversary of her death, because it's hard when you lose someone, right? Especially when it's not in the normal process of things. You don't expect to bury your kids, right? And it's hard. So I had to make it. I had to honor it every time throughout that first year, you was going to get the first Christmas, the first birthday, the first this, the first that. And on the first anniversary was the last of the firsts, if that makes sense. That was the last of the firsts. And I thought that would mark a huge turning point. Because last Christmas, I didn't even want Christmas. I didn't want presents. I cancelled it in my head. This year, I'm looking forward to it. Shows you the difference of where I was then and where I am now. So that was the purpose. That was the driver. I've got a purpose to live now. I've got to get out there and start training. And I started doing a little bit at a time. And I knew from my own experience of endurance events that, you know, I've got to condition my body. I can't just go and do 128 miles without training for it. And I didn't want it to be a, you know, I'd rather train hard and fight easy, so to speak. But I also said to myself, I don't care what the weather is. I don't care if it's blowing a hoolie. I don't care if it's pouring down a rain. I'm going to do it, because if I suffer for one day, she suffered for 10 years. So it's worth that suffering. And so I did it for Papyrus. I raised 5,235 quid. You can still donate if you want. I'll put it back up on my Facebook page later. You know, every little helps. Every little helps. I'm going to make it a yearly event as well. Every year, I'd like to thank two very important people, Steve Mitchell and Adrian Kitto, for joining me on that, because that was touching, boys. Touching. But anyway, I didn't think I'd be different from this, so I have to apologise, because this is a happy time now, not a sad time. So this was the first part of the road to recovery. There was a purpose to things, and I was so far away from where I am now. Even just doing the rides, I was still not right, and I was very fortunate to stumble across someone, because every time I posted something online, and I can't stress this enough. My social postings have been for a reason, and they've been for a reason to get to this crescendo that we're at now. I knew that I wanted to re-engage with my audience from years ago. I knew that I had something to say and something to share, and I think it was important. And I knew that I could. It's not. I said to you earlier, I don't want sympathy. I want to be able to help people in a way where, if I just help one person today, it's worth it. It's worth that you know, me standing here bawling my fucking eyes out in front of you. It's worth that. It's worth that humiliation, if someone would call it humiliation. I don't, but you get my drift. Because I think there was a purpose to my posts, and my post I was putting in there grief, loss, hashtagging it. And then I got an email out of the blue from a guy, and he said to me that we're looking to do this therapy with somebody. Would you be interested? It's free, but you know, the guys are going to record it all for training purposes. So this guy does the training for therapists, and he's going to use the recordings to help other people train in this manner. And I thought, wow, you know, talk about the universe lining up. I think sometimes when someone calls and you're ready, it can be a moment where, wow, this was just meant to be at that moment in time. The guy's name was Alex Howard, and I will never ever forget Alex, because he took me through a journey of because what I haven't told you is when Zoe went, it brought up a lot of old trauma from a childhood. I lost my mum at 3, and I found myself grieving for 2 people, my mum and my daughter. And I never thought I'd ever grieve for my mother. You know, that was 57 years ago, and I found myself grieving for and all these sort of issues that were around my childhood came up, and Alex was there to unpick it all. I equate it to similar. If you ever seen Indiana Jones and the Lost, no, the Raiders of the Lost Ark, I think it was, when they got the Ark of the Covenant, and they opened up the Ark of the Covenant, and everything wishes out and washes, and that's what it felt like. All my feelings coming up. So I had all these other issues that Zoe's passing came to the surface, and I didn't know what to do with them. And listen, I'm very experienced at dealing with other people's issues and helping other people, and I pride myself with that. But I couldn't do it on my own. I really couldn't do it on my own. I didn't know what to do. You have to excuse me. I got a bit of a excuse me, sniffly nose, and so. And Alex was really good at being able to unpick all that and took me through a journey of understanding that younger version of me and how he was feeling as well, and linking it all up to I understand now, and this is why I'm getting these feelings, and dealing with them remnants of the past, and also helping me deal with my unbelievable grief at losing my daughter. And we went through a journey together, and along with that purpose of knowing, and my decision to find a purpose, and also effectively to tell this story, and to get to that point where I could, and it meant something. Because before Zoe did die, we spoke quite openly about perhaps doing a podcast together one day, and little did I know she'd already, in her head, she'd already planned her demise, but she gave me hope, and I think she wanted me to get out there and just spread a message of hope in adversity. So in a way, I'm here because of her, and so that decision to find a purpose, one was to the journey of the bike ride. The second was to go through my own recovery, and I made a decision that I wanted to get my mojo back. On that 1st of January, when I said I'd lost my mojo, I wanted to get it back, and I can honestly tell you today, I've got it back. I don't know where it's going to go. That's the exciting thing. I don't know where it's all this amazing stuff that we've got. I can go live. I've got a streaming service. You got YouTube. You got all these platforms that you can jump on and engage with people. And it's amazing, this world that we live in. And I've just been doing some videos and rants about, how I see things, and what a wonderful country we live in. I see people slagging it off all the time, and I want to put it across that we live in such a beautiful country. I've got so much to express, and I have no idea where it's going to go. All I do know is I'm now at that place where I'm ready. I'm ready to explore, and I wasn't ready before. I couldn't do it before. And if anyone's been following me, you'll see the slow progress over the last 6 months, where I crop up every now and again. I do this and I post this, and I've done a couple of property events recently. Some training, which I never expected to do, because I stopped that back in 2015. I've had an absolute blast doing it. It's not what I want to do long term, although if there's a demand for it, then we'll satisfy that demand for the short term. But it's all adding to me getting back out there, talking, giving my brand of ribbons chat and ribbons rants, because as most of you know, I've got a lot to say. And if you're in that position where something has knocked you off balance, if you're in that position where something is that bad, where you're on the floor, there's a process to go through. You've got to find meaning in whatever happened, and I found the meaning in what Zoe passed. I knew that she was at peace, because she wasn't at peace in living amongst us, and I knew she wanted me to do something. She wanted me to take this and run with it, and and use it for good. And I took her letter, which I was very, very blessed to have had. And I read it regularly, and I see her 2-3 times a week. I just ride up to the Krem or drive up there, and I don't even say too much. I just go up there and have a connection. So if something's happened, no matter what it is, whether it's a financial issue, whether it's something like I've experienced, a loss, or if it's a relationship breakdown, it could be a business issue, it could be anything, right? One thing I do know, it's usually worse in here than in reality. And what we conjure up in our minds can be, there's a saying, right? You blow it out of all proportion. And that's what we do in our minds. We can blow things out of proportion if we're not careful, if we're not in control of that thought process and having a clear idea of what you want from it and having something to strive for. Because it's not about the destination. It's about that journey. And sometimes that journey is tough. Sometimes that journey can be challenging. That journey can be fraught with pain and suffering. But here's the thing. It's another one I nicked off Tony Robbins, really. But pain is part of life. Suffering is optional. And that's something I took from Zoe's passing. I could suffer. If I wanted to, I could suffer for longer. I could have sat there. It was either going to break me or make me. I had a mantra for many, many, many years, right? That because my mum passed when I was 3, whatever happened to me could never be as bad as that. You imagine a young child. I mean, we've got grandchildren now, and they're around that 2 mark. And next year they're going to be in the 3s, right? And I'll be looking at them thinking, wow, I was that age when my mum just disappeared. She went, how can you tell a 3-year-old, sorry, she ain't coming back because she's dead, right? You just can't do that, right? So for years I didn't understand. And when they told me, and this was no fault of anyone's, they said, Mummy's gone to the moon, because obviously it must have been upset. And they would look out the window, look, wave to Mummy on the moon. They never told me she weren't coming back. That's the problem. And when you're 3-4 years of age, you don't think of these things. People don't think, oh, I must tell him later that she ain't coming back. But there's a moment in history, in the future, where you realise that things aren't what they seem. So I always had that mantra that it can't be worse than losing your mum at 3 years of age. So whatever had happened to me after that, I had a reference point that made it look better. And you may not be in that position, but there's always something worse. And obviously it wasn't until Zoe passed that I realised that something can be worse. You just don't know what life's got to throw at you. We haven't got a clue how, I know life is short. It's so precious that you need to, cherish it. Time is the only thing you spend and never get back. You think about it, right? I listened to something the other day, a reel the other day. You've got 75 winters. Average of life, 75 winters, 75 springs, 75 summers, and 75 winters. How many have you had so far? Think about that. How many you got left? Now, we might live to a lot longer than that with modern technology. We don't know. But if we say 70, 75. 310 is 70, actually. But you know what I'm talking about. So life is precious. Live it. Make the most of it. Find, if you're in a situation, or you ever get in that situation where life's tough, think, there's someone worse off than me. There's something worse than this. It isn't that bad. It could be worse. And once you find some meaning in what's happening, it may not be the meaning you want. you can create any meaning you like, really, if you think about it. What does this mean? Well, you know, you put a label on it, but put a positive label on it. Put a positive spin on it. Find a reason to make it count, and then make a decision to do something about it. Because that decision was made on the 28th of December. Enough's enough. I've got to change. And it's taken me all this time, and I think I noticed it probably on the anniversary, on the bike ride. That day was probably the day everything changed, because I'd set that goal out. I achieved it. I was determined to do it. And don't get me wrong, I've done faster bike rides at that level. I've done longer bike rides at that level, but I've never had a ride with so much meaning attached to it. And that's why I'm going to do it every single year for the Shame Charity, and I'm going to try and get as many people to do it with me as possible. It's a challenge, but it's worth the challenge. It's worth the effort, because if we can save one life, and this is what I was trying to explain earlier, talking like this openly with my therapy with Alex. On the therapy with Alex, someone wrote on saying they'd seen this and they'd contemplated taking their own life. And after they realised what pain it causes the parents, and what they could see what they were going to do to their parents potentially, they decided to find another way to solve the problem, i.e. I'm not going to take my own life, because I couldn't do that to my parents. That one knife was worth all that therapy. I know I got the benefit from it, but having it recorded, allowing someone else to benefit from that one life was saved. It was worth it. So if I just affect someone here today in some way, shape or form, in a positive way, that's okay for me. I can't ask for much more than that. If you have been affected and you want to talk about something and you don't know what to do, you don't know how to reach out to me. Reach out to me. Send me a private message. I'll respond. I've had a couple of messages recently where I'm going to respond to them and let them know I'm there. You know what I'm talking about. You're probably on this call now. I know you're waiting now, a couple of you. Because I can't say I'm going to know exactly what you're going through, and it might be completely different to what I'm going through. But I'm here to listen and try and guide and try and help. Even if it's just a little nudge in the right direction, even if it's just getting you to see things from a different perspective. I'm a great believer in multi-dimensional perspectives, seeing things from more than one angle. That's what I'm good at. That's why, I do what I do with helping people, because I sit there and I'll go, well, what about this? What about that? Have you considered this? Have you considered that? Try and look at it from this perspective. My kids were always saying to me, you just get me to see something completely different. And that's what I'm good at. So if you are suffering, reach out. Even if it might, and please don't do this, right? Please don't think mine's not as bad as his. It doesn't matter, because it does matter. It does matter. And I think that's important to understand. Really important. So this sort of gives you an indication, really, of my little journey of the road to recovery, and gives you a sort of like a little platform of how to deal with adversity, or how I deal with adversity, how I see it of dealing with adversity. Because I think it's, sometimes we need a strategy. Sometimes we need a format of some kind. And I think if you use that, then I think it just gives you the edge. And I think we all, if we think about it, where no one ever gives you a manual and says this is how you're going to do with it. But you don't need a manual when life's going well, do you? You don't need one. If life's going well, it's fantastic. We're okay. We're just bundling along and we're enjoying ourselves. And then the adversity strikes. And as I said before, the quality of your life is in direct proportion to your ability to deal with bad news and adversity. The easier you can deal with bad news and adversity, the better your life is going to be. And I think it's understanding of how much you can take, i.e., because sometimes it's hard. It's hard. And sometimes we need help. And that's something that I was acutely aware of. I couldn't do it on my own. I needed someone who was who could help me, who could guide me, because I was blinded by it. Absolutely blinded by it. So I find myself in a position where, as I said earlier, I don't know where everything's going to go. All I do know is there is a new horizon. There is, and one thing I did take out of that moment in 2022 and December the 28th was hope. There was hope. I knew I was strong enough. I knew deep down. My daughter knew I was strong enough. She knew that deep down. She wrote about it. And I could dig deep. And I had to. I had to really dig deep. And it's the hardest thing I've ever had to deal with, by far. And I've had a lot to deal with. I've had a lot to deal with. And I hope no one ever has to go through it. And I know I've reached out, some people have reached out to me where they've had similar scenarios. And there's no words that can ever describe that feeling. You can't say to someone, oh, wow, yeah, I know how you feel, because everyone's different. But yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. But I can say, there goes the grace of God. I am religious myself. I do believe in God. I do pray now and again, and I'm not afraid to admit that. Some people don't like to admit if they're religious or not, but I have a faith, and I had that faith. Although I lost faith, I can tell you that now. I lost faith as a child. I didn't have any faith as a child. You know, if you're that powerful, mate, why did I lose my mum? And now, if they're powerful, how comes I lost my daughter? And there's not sort of questions that really we should be asking. Really, the question is really, how can I be of service? Because I think that's important, and that's why I'm doing this today. So I don't know if there's any questions, because I'm not sure how this all works. So I just see that we got a few comments on the streaming service, and I can't really see what's going on. So I do apologise, but right? You know where I am. Great thing about modern technology is you can reach out via messaging nowadays. You don't even need my phone number to message me through. So that's a little bit of the road to recovery, and it's a great story. Trust me, it's not it's a tragic story, but it's one where there's rehabilitation, there's hope, and there's love and recovery, and I don't think I've got much else to say now. I think I've said enough. Leave some comments, interact, and I'll be doing another one of these, but it won't be obviously so dramatic. And I apologise if anyone didn't realise it was going to be this dramatic. But I'll be doing another one soon, and that will be maybe on a slightly different theme, and we might be doing them regularly. And if necessary, if you've got something you want to talk about, you're not quite sure about something, or perhaps we could use it as a case study of some kind, or if you just throw me some messages, and then we can deal with that, because I think sometimes it's as I said earlier, I don't want anyone to think, oh, my problem's not as big as his, because it's got nothing to do with size. It's what occupies your mind, what goes beyond you, between your ears, because sometimes it can be overwhelming, and you can't see the wood through trees. Who's ever been in that situation? I've been in it many a time. Oh my word, what's going on here? And one thing I did learn is that there's a prayer they use in Alcoholics Anonymous. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And that was ringing in my ears, actually, because I don't drink, see myself. And fortunately, I don't, because I think if I had been drinking, I might have been in a bit of a state. But I think that prayer really says a lot. The courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Knowing what I can't change, I can't control, is important. And I urge you, anyone, to take that philosophy, because in a way it's a prayer, it's a philosophy, really. It's like, well, there's certain things you can control, there's certain things you can't. You just got to understand what you can and what you can't, and have the courage to change them things you can. And that's the message I'm going to give you and leave you, is the courage that I had to face was the thing that surprised me the most. Because coming from that place of not wanting to be here, I didn't think I had the courage to come through that, face it head on, and not run away from it. I used to, literally, honestly, I'll tell you, I used to press the fuck it button. Oh, fuck it, doesn't matter. Oh, God. I did it as a kid, I did it as a teenager, did it in my adult life. I'd find some way to make myself feel different. From in younger days when I used to drink many, many, many years ago, might go and have a few pints to change the way I felt. Or I go buying shit, just go and spending a load of money, or I go out and do something, just find something to get up to. And so I don't do that anymore. And I think that's because I realized that I got the courage to face these things, to face the feelings and allow them to come up and process them, because that's something with adversity you're gonna deal with. A lot of feelings you don't understand, the feelings of uncertainty, the feelings of overwhelm. And being a dyslexic person, I get overwhelmed quite easily with just normal writing, and people don't understand that with me sometimes. Is that even just typing on the computer can be a pain in the ass. Just writing an email. If you ever get an email from me, it's going to be very short, I can assure you. No pleasantries, because I find it difficult, and it's understanding. So knowing that you could get overwhelmed and dealing with that, but as I said earlier, I've had a couple of people reached out recently. We'll be in touch, and if you've got, you want to reach out, you know what to do. All right. Listen, God bless you all. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you again in the near future. Thank you very much.